we can go right ahead and talk about the Denver Nuggets going up 3-2 in this series and the ridiculous performance coming in from Jokic and really just the storylines behind this game. I mean, first off, I'm just going to say Jokic played absolutely phenomenally in this game. I mean, like, he was just a beast. I mean, look at that right there. Air Nikola talking. What is you talking about? Like, Rudy Gobert cannot guard Jokic. Like, straight up cannot guard him. It is, and you'd expect like a defensive player of the year to put up somewhat of a good matchup against the MVP. Like, literally defensive player of the year, MVP, head to head. And it's like you'd think that the defensive player of the year would have something to say against the MVP and at least hinder him a little bit. But no, Jokic just toyed with him and acted as if he was just any other normal center in the NBA. Like, I don't know what it is. Rudy Gobert cannot check him. Jokic shot 15 for 22 from the field. He had 40 points and 13 assists. Nothing that Rudy Gobert was doing could have stopped him, like, whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. And, like, we've seen this in previous years when Rudy Gobert was still on Utah and Nikola Jokic was on Denver. When they were in the bubble, Utah, they were up 3-1, but because of Nikola Jokic's performances and Jamal Murray along with that as well, they had no answer and they ended up blowing the 3-1 lead. Jokic has always dominated against Rudy Gobert. And what's even funnier is at one point in that performance, like at one point in the bubble or at some point in the NBA season, I don't exactly remember exactly when that was, but it was a while ago, Rudy Gobert said, "I got Jokic," and then Jokic was like, "Brother, I got 40 points." Like, he cannot check him. That's one. Two, I feel like a lot of fans in the NBA right now, they were sort of on the hype train for the Timberwolves. Like, they were very, very quick to calling Anthony Edwards the next Michael Jordan. Very, very quick. And it's sort of like, I feel like they may have jumped the gun a little bit. And now that they jumped the gun, the Nuggets, all of a sudden, they're up 3-2 in the series. Like, I'm not going to pin this entirely on Anthony Edwards, obviously, because that would be ridiculous and absurd. But in this performance, in this game, he shot 5 for 15 from the field, and he had 18 points. Now, aside from Anthony Edwards, there's really nothing on the Timberwolves that's really consistent offensively, at least in this series. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, he shot 10 for 19 from the field, which is, it's not that bad, but, I mean, 10 for 19, that's a lot of shots for only 23 points. And, excuse me. But regardless, it was still a relatively good game. He did shoot over 50% from the field, so I can't say much about it. But the rest of the team, Alexander Walker, he went 5 for 12. Jaden McDaniels, 4 for 9. Naz Reid, 3 for 8. Monte Morris, 3 for 6. And again, Anthony Edwards' 5 for 15 was, it wasn't all that. Especially, like, considering how we call him the next Michael Jordan, and everyone's calling him the next Michael Jordan, the next Kobe Bryant, whatever you want to call it. This was a very underwhelming performance, especially in a game where they desperately needed it. Granted, series is not over yet. They go to the Minnesota in Game 6, so there is a possibility that Anthony Edwards will show up in this game and prove his importance and prove the prowess that he's the next Kobe Bryant, the next Michael Jordan, whatever you want to call it. But I definitely feel like they jumped the gun when hyping up the Timberwolves. And now, since they jumped the gun, the Nuggets took advantage of that, and they're up 3-2 in this series. Granted, this wasn't the fans' fault, obviously. I think the coaching staff from the from the Denver Nuggets is just incredibly competent, and they came up with a really good strategy to sort of slow down the rest of the Timberwolves and their offense. And it's proven effective in this game and in the series. Jamal Murray, he didn't really play that well in this game. I mean, well, I'm going to rephrase that. He didn't have much offensive production in this game like we're used to, but when he did get his shots, he made them count. He shot 50% from the field and had 16 points. Surprisingly, he didn't take a single three-pointer. I'm very surprised by that. I feel like Jamal Murray should be taking a lot more threes than the rest of the players on this team. And as a whole, the team took 19 three-pointers. Like, that's, in this era right now, that's rather low. And it just shows how dominant Jokic was throughout the entirety of this game, scoring with all the points inside. Same with Aaron Gordon, 7 for 14 from the field with 18 points. And again, 0 three-pointers because most of the shots were inside shots and, inside the arc. And the fact that they're winning, taking all of these shots inside the arc, is just as astonishing as shooting the lights out against another team. Because, again, this team has a lot of centers and a lot of big men that can protect the paint. And here they are making them almost a non-factor. Rudy Gobert, he didn't play that bad in this game. He didn't play bad at all, actually. He shot 7 for 7 from the field, and he had 18 points. Very, very impressive, obviously. But it was his defense that was the problem, surprisingly, given, I know, it's like the defensive player of the year. His biggest problem tonight was the defense. But when you're guarding Jokic, I mean, what else can you really do? Jokic's game is just, and the reason why I'm looking off to the side is because I'm looking at the box scores right now. But Jokic's game is just, it's unguardable. Rudy Gobert cannot guard this man, and Jokic has wiped the floor with him several times. It was only a matter of time before the Nuggets got into a rhythm and eventually come out and expose the Timberwolves. Now, I knew the series wasn't over after the Timberwolves won those 2 away games. I knew that the Nuggets were most definitely going to fight. But I didn't expect the results to turn this quickly in the series. I will admit it and say I did not expect the results to turn this quickly. I would have assumed that the Nuggets would fall under a 3-1 hole, but they ended up tying the series before, and now they're up 3-2 in the series, which is very important if you are the Denver Nuggets. So now they move on. Well, they're going to move on and play in Minnesota with the hopes of closing the series out in Game 6, similar to how the Knicks are going to the Pacers and are expected to close out in Game 6 as well. And I feel like I have a feeling that the Timberwolves, they aren't going to go down easy, and this series is going to go to 7 games. I wouldn't be surprised if this series goes to 7 games due to Anthony Edwards and his brilliance. I did say that the fans jumped the gun, but I am not going to say that his performances in the postseason are anything short of extraordinary, because he's been performing very well in the games that they've been winning. So, playing at home, he also had 44 points in the last home game that they played. It just wasn't enough to beat the Denver Nuggets. So I have a feeling that his performance in this series and in the next game is going to be far different than his performance in this game, thus pushing the series to 7 games and having the deciding game in Denver. That's my prediction for the series, and I feel like that's where this series is going to end up going. And the Timberwolves, they really need to figure out how to stop Jokic. They got to figure it out. Rudy Gobert, the defensive player of the year, he's got to figure out how to stop him. And he hasn't been able to figure out how to stop him for the longest time. So that's all I have to say about this segment and these games that were going on. So we are out of time in the second segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the third segment where we shift our focus to the WNBA. The WNBA game started yesterday. I'm only going to focus on one game because, to be quite frank with you, I only watched one game last night because the playoffs were happening last night. And I've said previously how I just don't like how the WNBA season has to start right when the playoffs are starting. Because, again, I was watching the playoff games before I was watching the WNBA games. Or, like, I only watched one WNBA game. And you guys know exactly what game that is. That was Caitlin Clark's debut. And that's exactly what the game that we're going to talk about. So I will be right back after this short break to talk about Caitlin's debut.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.